The old bell above the door chimed softly as Maria pushed through the entrance of Rosie's diner. Her arms ached from carrying her 9-month-old daughter Lily for the past 3 hours, walking from one end of downtown to the other. The baby carrier she used to have broke last month, and buying a new one wasn't even on her list of possibilities right now. The warm air inside the diner felt like a hug after the bitter October wind outside. Maria's cheeks were red from the cold, and Lily's little nose was pink too. Despite being bundled up in every blanket Maria owned, she looked around the small restaurant, taking in the cracked vinyl booths and the smell of coffee that had been brewing too long. It wasn't fancy, but it was warm, and that's all that mattered right now. "Just one?" asked the waitress, a kind-looking woman in her 50s with tired eyes and a genuine smile. "Yes, please," Maria replied, her voice barely above a whisper. She felt embarrassed about her appearance. Her jeans had a small hole in the knee, and her coat was too thin for the weather. She hadn't had a proper haircut in months, and she knew she looked like exactly what she was, someone who was struggling. The waitress led her to a corner booth away from the main area. Maria wasn't sure if this was kindness or if the woman could tell she might not be ordering much. Either way, she was grateful for the privacy. She slid into the booth and carefully arranged Lily on her lap, making sure the baby was comfortable. Lily gurgled softly, her big brown eyes looking around the new place with curiosity. At 9 months old, she was starting to notice everything around her. Maria loved watching her daughter discover the world, even if their world had become very small lately. "What can I get you, honey?" the waitress asked, pulling out a worn notepad. Maria looked at the menu, though she already knew what she could afford. "Just coffee, please, black." The waitress nodded and walked away. Maria opened her small purse and counted the bills inside for the 3rd time that day. $12.37. The coffee was $2. That left her with just over $10, and she needed to make it last until she found work. 2 weeks ago, she had been fired from her job at the grocery store. The manager said they were cutting hours and had to let some people go. She knew it was really because she had been late 3 times when Lily was sick, and she couldn't find anyone to watch her. Being a single mom meant making impossible choices every day. She had been looking for work every day since then. This morning, she had applied at a clothing store, a fast food restaurant, and a gas station. Each place took her application with a polite smile and a promise to call if anything opened up. She had heard those words so many times that they didn't mean anything anymore. The waitress returned with her coffee. "There you go, sweetie. Let me know if you need anything else." Maria wrapped her cold hands around the warm mug and took a small sip. The coffee was strong and bitter, but it was hot, and that's what counted. She planned to make this 1 cup last as long as possible. Maybe an hour, if she was lucky. Lily started to fuss a little, the way she did when she was getting hungry. Maria checked the time on the old clock on the wall. It was almost 4 o'clock, definitely time for Lily's afternoon bottle. She reached into her diaper bag and pulled out the baby bottle she had prepared that morning, using the last of the formula powder. The formula had cost $8, which was most of what she had left after paying for their tiny studio apartment. She had diluted it just a little bit to make it last longer, though she felt guilty about it every time. Lily needed proper nutrition, and Maria worried constantly that she wasn't providing enough. She had applied for government assistance, but the paperwork was taking forever, and she had been told it could be weeks before she heard anything. Meanwhile, bills kept coming and Lily kept growing and needing things. As she fed Lily the bottle, Maria thought about her life just 1 year ago. She had been working full-time at an office, had her own car, and was even saving money. Then she got pregnant and everything changed. The father disappeared when he found out about the baby, and Maria's family lived 3 states away. She had managed for a while, but childcare costs ate up most of her paycheck. And when Lily got sick frequently during the winter, missing work became a problem. Now here she was, 26 years old, sitting in a diner with $10 to her name and no idea how she was going to pay for next week's rent. But watching Lily drink her bottle, seeing her daughter's trust and contentment, Maria felt a familiar surge of determination. This little girl depended on her completely, and somehow she would figure it out. She always did. The diner was mostly empty at this time of day. A few older men sat at the counter, probably regulars who came here every afternoon. There was a couple in another booth sharing a piece of pie, and a man by himself near the window, wearing jeans and a baseball cap, reading a newspaper. Maria's stomach growled loudly enough that she looked around. embarrassed to see if anyone had noticed. She hadn't eaten since yesterday evening, a peanut butter sandwich that had been her dinner. She had given Lily her last jar of baby food for lunch and had been planning to buy more after she found work today. She looked at the menu again, focusing on the cheapest items. Toast was $3. A bowl of soup was $4.50. Even the side of French fries was $3.25. Every dollar mattered now. Lily finished her bottle and smiled up at her mom, milk still on her lips. Maria couldn't help but smile back. This baby was her whole world, her reason for getting up every morning and trying again. No matter how hard things got, Lily's smile made everything worthwhile. "More coffee?" the waitress asked, appearing beside the table with a pot. "Yes, please," Maria said quickly. Free refills meant she could stay here a little longer, and she wasn't ready to face the cold street again. As the waitress poured the coffee, she glanced at Lily. "She's beautiful." "How old?" "9 months," Maria replied, her voice filled with pride despite everything. "They're such a blessing at that age," the woman said kindly. "Enjoy it. They grow up so fast." After the waitress left, Maria held Lily close and looked out the window at the busy street. Somewhere out there was a job for her, a chance to build a better life for both of them. She just had to keep looking, keep trying, keep believing that tomorrow might be different. For now, this warm diner booth was enough. Her daughter was fed and safe, and that was what mattered most. Maria had been sitting in the corner booth for almost an hour now, nursing her second cup of coffee. The warmth from the mug felt good in her hands, and she took tiny sips to make it last. Outside, the afternoon light was starting to fade, and she knew she'd have to leave soon. But for now, this felt like the safest place in the world. Lily had fallen asleep in her arms about 20 minutes ago, her tiny body warm and relaxed. Maria loved these peaceful moments when her daughter slept. It was the only time her mind could rest from constantly worrying about what came next. She stroked Lily's soft brown hair and listened to her quiet breathing. The diner had gotten a little busier as the afternoon wore on. A few more customers had come in, and Maria could hear the sounds of plates clinking and quiet conversations. She tried to make herself as small as possible in the corner, not wanting to draw attention to the fact that she'd been here so long with just coffee. Her stomach cramped with hunger, a sharp reminder that she hadn't eaten in over 20 hours. She pressed her hand against her belly, trying to quiet the rumbling. The smell of food from the kitchen was getting harder to ignore. Every time the waitress walked by carrying a plate of hot food, Maria's mouth watered. She looked at the menu one more time, even though she had it memorized by now. A grilled cheese sandwich was $5. Chicken soup was $4.50. Even a simple side salad was $3.75. She opened her purse again and counted her money, hoping somehow there would be more than before. Still $10.37. The smart thing would be to order something small, just a piece of toast maybe to stop the hunger pains. But as she held her sleeping daughter, Maria's mind went to more practical things. The baby food she'd given Lily for lunch had been the last jar. Tomorrow morning, Lily would need breakfast, and there was nothing left. With $10, Maria could buy 2 jars of baby food and a small container of formula. That would get them through tomorrow and maybe the next day if she was careful. Or she could buy herself food now and worry about Lily's meals later. It wasn't really a choice at all. Lily stirred in her arms and opened her eyes, looking up at her mother with that trusting gaze that always made Maria's heart ache with love. The baby made a soft cooing sound and reached up to touch Maria's face with her tiny hand. "Hi, sweetheart," Maria whispered. "Did you have a good nap?" Lily smiled, one of those pure, innocent smiles that made everything else disappear for a moment. Maria kissed her forehead and adjusted her position so they were both more comfortable. As if on cue, Lily's expression changed, and she started making the fussy sounds that meant she was hungry again. It had been 3 hours since her last bottle, and Maria knew she needed to eat soon. Babies Lily's age needed to eat every few hours, and Maria had become an expert at reading her daughter's signals. She reached into the diaper bag and pulled out another bottle she had prepared earlier. This one was made from the baby formula she had carefully rationed from the container. She had mixed it with slightly more water than the directions said, trying to make it last longer, but she always worried it wasn't enough nutrition for Lily. As she started to feed the baby, Maria felt her own stomach twist with hunger. The cramping was getting worse, and she was starting to feel a little dizzy. She hadn't felt this hungry since the early days after Lily was born. when money was tight but not this desperate. She watched Lily drink eagerly from the bottle, her little hands holding onto Maria's fingers. This was what mattered. This perfect little person who depended on her completely. Maria had brought Lily into this world, and it was her job to make sure she had everything she needed, no matter what. The waitress came by to check on them. "How are you two doing over here?" "We're fine, thank you," Maria replied, though her voice was a little shaky from hunger. The woman looked at them for a moment, her eyes kind but observant. "That baby sure loves her mama. You can see it in the way she looks at you." Maria felt tears prick her eyes at the kindness in the woman's voice. "She's my whole world." "I can tell," the waitress said softly. "You let me know if you need anything, okay?" After she walked away, Maria continued feeding Lily, trying not to think about her own empty stomach. She focused instead on her daughter's contentment, the way Lily's eyes stayed locked on hers while she drank. This was love in its purest form, putting someone else's needs completely before your own. When Lily finished the bottle, Maria lifted her to her shoulder and gently patted her back until she heard a small burp. Then she held her close, breathing in that sweet baby smell that always comforted her. "We're going to be okay," she whispered into Lily's hair. "Mama's going to figure this out. I promise." She meant it, even though she had no idea how. Tomorrow she would start looking for work again. She would check every store, every restaurant, every office until someone gave her a chance. She would do whatever it took to build a better life for both of them. But right now she was so hungry that her hands were starting to shake slightly. She put the empty bottle back in the diaper bag and took another sip of coffee, hoping the warmth would help settle her stomach. A man at a nearby table was eating a hamburger and fries, and the smell made Maria's mouth water so much she had to swallow hard. She looked away and focused on Lily instead, singing softly under her breath the way she did when the baby was fussy. Lily was content now, fed and warm and safe in her mother's arms. That was all that mattered. Maria's hunger was temporary. She was an adult and she could handle being hungry for a while longer. But Lily was just a baby. She needed regular meals and proper nutrition to grow and be healthy. Maria thought about her own mother, who had raised 3 children mostly on her own after Maria's father left. She remembered her mom sometimes saying she wasn't hungry when there wasn't quite enough food for everyone. At the time, Maria had believed her. Now she understood that her mother had probably been just as hungry as Maria was right now. It was funny how becoming a parent changed everything. Before Lily, Maria had thought she understood love and sacrifice. But nothing had prepared her for this overwhelming need to protect and provide for her child, even when it meant going without herself. She looked around the diner again, taking in the other customers who were eating their meals without thinking about it. She wondered if any of them had ever been in her situation, had ever had to choose between their own needs and their child's. She hoped not, but she suspected there were more parents out there struggling than most people realized. The clock on the wall showed it was almost 5 o'clock. Soon the dinner crowd would start coming in, and Maria would need to give up her table. She would walk back out into the cold evening air and face whatever came next. But for these last few minutes, she was warm and Lily was happy. And that was enough. 3 booths away from Maria, James Rodriguez sat with his newspaper spread open on the table, though he hadn't read a single word in the past hour. Instead, he had been watching the young mother in the corner booth, and what he saw was breaking his heart. James looked like any other working man in his worn jeans, faded blue baseball cap and old leather jacket. His boots were scuffed and his hands showed the calluses of someone who worked with them every day. Nobody in this diner would guess that he was the founder and CEO of Rodriguez Construction, a company that had grown from a small family business into one of the largest construction firms in the state. But James remembered what it was like to be broke. He remembered what it felt like to count every dollar and still come up short. He had been coming to Rosie's diner for about 3 months now, usually on weekday afternoons when he needed to escape from the corporate world. His office was only 10 minutes away, but it might as well have been on another planet. Here, nobody knew who he was, and he could just be another regular guy grabbing coffee and watching the world go by. It was during these visits that he first noticed Maria. She always sat in the same corner booth, always ordered just coffee, and always had her baby with her. At first he thought maybe she was just a new mom taking a break from being home all day. Lots of parents came to places like this to get out of the house. But as the weeks went by, James started noticing other things. The way she made one cup of coffee last for hours, how she carefully counted money before ordering anything, the fact that she always fed her baby but never ordered food for herself. Today, watching her choose between her own hunger and her child's needs, everything became crystal clear. James knew that look in her eyes. He had seen it in his own mother's face 30 years ago. He was 8 years old when his father left, abandoning his mother with 3 young children and no money. His mom, Carmen, had worked 2 jobs just to keep food on the table and a roof over their heads. James remembered many nights when she would say she had already eaten, pushing her own portion toward him and his sisters. He believed her then, but years later he realized she had been lying, going hungry so her children could eat. Those memories never left him. Even now, as a successful businessman with more money than he could spend in a lifetime, James could still remember the taste of government cheese and the embarrassment of using food stamps at the grocery store. He remembered his mother's tired face when she thought the kids weren't looking, and the way she would quietly cry sometimes when she thought they were asleep. It was those memories that drove him to success, but also to never forget where he came from. That's why he still came to places like this diner, why he still preferred simple food and regular people to fancy restaurants and business dinners. He never wanted to lose touch with the reality that most people lived every day. James watched as Maria fed her baby another bottle, her own hands shaking slightly from what he recognized as hunger. She was trying to hide it, but he could see the signs, the way she held her stomach sometimes, how she sipped her coffee extra slowly, the careful way she moved like someone who was weak from not eating enough. He wanted to do something, but he wasn't sure what. Walk over and offer to buy her lunch? That might embarrass her or make her suspicious. Hand her some cash? That would probably make her feel like charity case. And he could tell from watching her that she had too much pride for that. James folded his newspaper and signaled the waitress, Betty, who had been working here for as long as he'd been coming. She was a good woman with a big heart who knew most of her regular customers by name. "Hey, Betty," he said quietly when she came over. "That young lady in the corner booth, do you know anything about her?" Betty glanced over at Maria and then back at James. "Sweet girl. Been coming in for a few months now. Always polite, always tips what she can even though she clearly doesn't have much. Why do you ask?" "Just wondering. She seems like she's having a hard time." Betty's expression softened. "You notice that too? She orders coffee and makes it last for hours. I've never seen her eat anything, but she always makes sure that baby is fed. Breaks my heart, honestly." James nodded. He had suspected as much. "What's her story?" "I don't know all the details, but I think she's a single mom. I heard her on the phone once talking about looking for work. Seems like a really good person just going through a rough patch." That confirmed what James had been thinking. He made a decision. "Betty, I want to do something for her, but I need your help. I don't want her to know it's coming from me." The waitress looked at him with curiosity and respect. In the months she'd known James, she had figured out he was more than just a regular construction worker. There was something about the way he carried himself, the quality of his clothes despite their casual appearance, and the generous tips he always left. But he was also genuine and kind, not like some rich people who look down on working folks. "What did you have in mind?" "First, I want to pay for whatever she orders today. Tell her it's on the house or make up some story about a customer who paid it forward. Whatever makes her comfortable." "I can do that," Betty said with a smile. "And Betty, I need to know more about her situation. Does she come in regularly? What days, what time? I want to help. But I need to understand what's really going on first." "She's been coming in maybe 3 or 4 times a week, usually in the afternoons around this time. Always the same routine. Coffee only, takes care of the baby, sits there for as long as she can. I get the feeling she doesn't have anywhere else to go during the day." James felt his chest tighten. This was exactly what his mother had gone through. Wandering around during the day with small children because staying home was too depressing, but not having money to actually do anything, finding free or cheap places to spend time, trying to make it through each day. "There's something else," Betty continued, lowering her voice even more. "Last week I saw her in the grocery store parking lot with the baby. She was sitting in this old beat-up car and it looked like she was living in it. I'm not sure, but I think things might be worse than we thought." That hit James like a punch to the stomach. Living in a car with a baby? In October, when the nights were getting cold? He thought of his own daughter, safe and warm in her comfortable bedroom at home, and felt sick thinking about that little baby spending nights in a cold car. "Okay," he said, his voice firm with determination. "Here's what we're going to do." He pulled out his wallet and placed a $100 bill on the table. "This covers her meal today and several more visits if she comes back. But don't give her the money directly. Just make sure she gets fed." Betty nodded, understanding the importance of preserving Maria's dignity. "And Betty, I'm going to need your help with something bigger. I think this young woman needs more than just a free meal. She needs a real chance to get back on her feet." James was already forming a plan in his mind. He couldn't just walk away from this situation, not when he had the power to actually make a difference. His mother had struggled alone because there was nobody to help her. But Maria didn't have to struggle alone. "What are you thinking?" Betty asked. "I'm thinking it's time to see what Rodriguez construction can do for a hard-working mother who just needs someone to believe in her." James watched as Betty walked over to Maria's table with a warm smile. He couldn't hear the conversation from where he sat, but he could see Maria's face clearly, and what happened next made his chest tighten with emotion. "Honey," Betty said gently, approaching Maria's booth, "I have some good news for you. A customer who was here earlier today wanted to pay for someone's meal. He said to pick someone who looked like they could use a little kindness, and I immediately thought of you." Maria looked up at Betty with confusion. "I don't understand. Someone already paid for your dinner. Whatever you want from the menu, it's already taken care of. The gentleman said he remembered what it was like to struggle with young children and he wanted to help." Maria's eyes filled with tears immediately. "Are you serious?" "Completely serious. So what sounds good to you? The meatloaf is really good tonight, and it comes with mashed potatoes and green beans. Or if you prefer, the chicken and rice is popular too." For a moment, Maria couldn't speak. She just held Lily closer and tried not to cry in front of the waitress. I can't believe this. Are you sure?" "Absolutely sure. And between you and me," Betty leaned in closer, "that customer left enough to cover several meals, so don't you worry about the cost. Just order what you want." James felt his throat tighten as he watched Maria break down. She covered her face with one hand while holding Lily with the other, and her shoulders shook as she cried quietly. It was the kind of crying that came from months of stress and fear, and finally receiving unexpected kindness. "The meatloaf sounds perfect," Maria finally managed to say. "Thank you so much." "I can't even—" "Thank you." Betty patted her shoulder gently. "It'll be right out, sweetie." As Betty walked back toward the kitchen, she caught James's eye and gave him a small nod. He felt a mixture of satisfaction and heartbreak. One meal wasn't going to solve Maria's problems, but at least she would eat today. James pulled out his phone and stepped outside the diner to make some calls. The first was to his assistant back at the office. "Rachel, it's James. I need you to do something for me." "Of course, Mr. Rodriguez. What do you need?" "I want you to create a new position in our customer service department. Entry level, but with a good salary and full benefits. Make sure it includes health insurance and that new child care assistance program we started last month." "Okay, I can draft something up. What kind of experience are we looking for?" "Someone who's reliable, hardworking, and needs a real chance. Don't worry about extensive experience. We can train the right person. I want this posted tomorrow, and I want you to handle the interviews personally." "Got it. Anything else specific about the position?" "Yes. Make sure the interview process is welcoming for parents. Flexible scheduling during the interview. Understanding if they need to bring their children. We want to attract someone who might not feel comfortable applying to other places." Rachel had worked for James for 5 years, and she knew him well enough to recognize when he had someone specific in mind. "I'll take care of it, Mr. Rodriguez." The next call was to his friend David, who ran a small nonprofit that helped families in crisis. "David, it's James. I need some advice." "Hey man, what's going on?" "I've come across a situation. A young mother with a baby who's clearly struggling financially. I think she might be homeless living in her car. What's the best way to help without making her feel like charity?" David was quiet for a moment. "That's tough. People in those situations often have a lot of pride. They want to work for what they get. Job opportunities are usually better than handouts. That's what I was thinking. I'm creating a position at the company, but what about immediate needs? Housing, food, that kind of thing? We have some emergency housing programs, but they usually have waiting lists. The best thing is often just giving people a chance to help themselves. Good job, decent pay, stable schedule. That solves most problems over time. What about short-term help? Small things that don't feel like charity. Gift cards that could be from anyone. Community resources that feel normal to use. The key is preserving dignity while meeting needs. James thought about this as they talked. He had learned something important from his own mother's experience. Sometimes the help you remember most isn't the biggest gesture, but the one that came when you needed it most and didn't make you feel ashamed. After finishing his calls, James went back inside the diner. Maria was eating her meal slowly, savoring every bite. Lily was in her lap, playing with a small toy while her mother ate. The change in Maria's face was remarkable. She looked less tired, more hopeful, like a weight had been lifted from her shoulders. James sat back down at his table and ordered a slice of pie, wanting to stay long enough to see Maria finish her meal. As he ate, he thought about his next steps. Tomorrow, Rachel would post the job opening. But James knew that applying for jobs could take time and Maria needed help now. He had an idea about that too. He called Betty over to his table again. How often does she come in here? Usually every few days. Same time, usually around 3 or 4 in the afternoon. Perfect. I want you to do something for me. Next time she comes in, tell her that Rosie's is looking for someone to help with a few hours of cleaning and organizing in the mornings. Nothing fancy, just tidying up, maybe some inventory work. Say it pays $15 an hour, cash, and she can bring the baby if she needs to. Betty raised an eyebrow. James, this place doesn't need extra cleaning help. It does now. I'll cover the cost. But Betty, it has to feel real. Like a legitimate job opportunity, not charity. Can you make that work? Betty smiled. You're a good man, James Rodriguez. Yeah, I can make that work. Rosie will go along with it if I explain the situation. Good. And Betty, one more thing. I need you to help me find out more about her situation, where she's staying, what kind of help she really needs. But be casual about it, okay? Just friendly conversation. I can do that. She seems like she could use a friend anyway. James looked over at Maria, who was finishing her meal with obvious satisfaction. She was talking softly to Lily, pointing out things around the diner and making the baby smile. Despite everything she was going through, she was still being a good mother, still finding ways to make her daughter happy. That's when James knew for certain that he was making the right choice. This wasn't just about helping someone who was struggling. This was about recognizing strength and determination when he saw it. Maria wasn't looking for a handout. She was just looking for a chance. His phone buzzed with a text from Rachel confirming that the job posting would be live first thing in the morning. James smiled as he watched Maria carefully pack up the leftover food from her meal, probably saving it for later. Tomorrow would bring new possibilities for both of them, though Maria didn't know it yet. James finished his pie and left money on the table for his bill, plus another generous tip for Betty. As he walked past Maria's table on his way out, he heard her quietly telling Lily about the kind stranger who had bought their dinner. There are still good people in the world, baby girl, she whispered. People who care about each other. James stepped out into the evening air, already planning his next move. This was just the beginning. 3 months later, Maria walked into Rosie's diner with a confidence that hadn't been there before. She was wearing a new blouse and clean jeans, and Lily was dressed in a cute pink outfit that actually fit her properly. Most importantly, both of them looked healthy and well-fed. There's my favorite girl, Betty called out from behind the counter. And look at Miss Lil. Hey, she's getting so big. Maria smiled and gave Betty a hug. It had become their Friday afternoon tradition, stopping by the diner after Maria finished her morning shift at Rodriguez Construction's main office. She's almost walking now, Maria said, settling Lily on her hip. Yesterday she took 3 steps before falling down. That's wonderful. Before you know it, she'll be running around getting into everything. Maria laughed. I'm not ready for that yet. It was hard to believe how much her life had changed since that day 3 months ago, when a stranger's kindness had given her the first real meal she'd had in days. The very next week, Betty had mentioned that Rosie's needed some help with morning cleaning and organization. It wasn't much, just 15 hours a week, but it was enough to buy food and gas for her old car. More importantly, it had given Maria something she'd lost: hope. 2 weeks after starting at the diner, Maria had seen a job posting for a customer service position at Rodriguez Construction. The posting was different from others she'd seen. It specifically mentioned that they welcomed applications from parents and offered childcare assistance. Something about the wording made her feel like this company actually cared about people like her. The interview had been unlike any she'd experienced before. Rachel, the woman who interviewed her, was warm and understanding. When Maria had to bring Lily because she couldn't find a babysitter, Rachel had said it was no problem at all. They even had toys in the office for exactly that situation. "We believe that being a parent shows responsibility and dedication," Rachel had told her. "Those are exactly the qualities we're looking for." Maria got the job. The salary was more than she'd ever made before, and the benefits were incredible. Health insurance for both her and Lily, paid time off, and best of all, on-site childcare. For the first time since Lily was born, Maria didn't have to choose between working and taking care of her daughter. Within a month, she had saved enough money to move out of her car and into a small but clean apartment. It wasn't fancy, but it had a bedroom for Lily, a kitchen where Maria could cook real meals, and windows that let in lots of light. After months of uncertainty, having a place to call home felt like a miracle. "So, how's work going?" Betty asked as she poured Maria a cup of coffee. The good coffee now, not because Maria was counting pennies, but because Betty knew it was her favorite. "Really good. They promoted me to team lead last week, which means a raise and more responsibility. I'm training new customer service representatives now." "That's fantastic. I'm so proud of you." Maria looked around the diner, remembering that desperate afternoon when she'd sat in the corner booth with only $10 to her name. It felt like a lifetime ago, even though it had only been 3 months. "Betty, can I ask you something?" "Of course, honey." "That day when the customer paid for my meal, do you remember anything else about him?" "I've always wanted to thank him properly." Betty smiled mysteriously. "Just that he seemed like a good man who understood what it was like to struggle. Some people help because they remember being helped when they needed it most." Maria nodded. She had tried to find out who had shown her that kindness, but Betty always gave vague answers. Part of her suspected that the diner's frequent acts of kindness, the occasional free meal for someone who looked like they needed it, the customer appreciation gift cards that seemed to find their way to struggling families, weren't as random as they appeared. Not that it mattered. What mattered was that someone had cared enough to help when she needed it most. "Actually," Maria said, "I've been thinking about that a lot lately, about how one person's kindness can change everything." "What do you mean?" "Well, at work we've started a program. It's called the Family Support Initiative. We partner with local organizations to help parents who are struggling. Job training, emergency childcare, things like that. My supervisor asked me to help coordinate it because of my experience." Betty's eyes lit up. "That's wonderful. You're helping other people the way someone helped you." "Exactly. And the best part is, the company owner is completely supportive. Mr. Rodriguez apparently grew up in a family that struggled, so he understands how important these programs are. He's funding the whole thing out of his own pocket." What Maria didn't know was that James Rodriguez was sitting in his usual booth just 2 tables away, listening to every word with a smile on his face. James had been coming to the diner regularly over the past 3 months, watching Maria's transformation from a distance. He had seen her go from desperate and hungry to confident and thriving. More than that, he had watched her become exactly the kind of person he had hoped she would be. Someone who used her own experience to help others. The Family Support Initiative had been Maria's idea, though she didn't know that her supervisor had brought it directly to James. When Rachel had told him about Maria's proposal to help other struggling parents, James had approved it immediately and made sure Maria was put in charge of the program. In just 2 months, they had helped 12 families find stable housing, 6 parents get jobs with benefits, and arranged emergency childcare for dozens of working parents. Maria's personal understanding of what families needed made her incredibly effective at running the program. James finished his coffee and left money on the table, including his usual generous tip. As he walked past Maria's table, he heard her talking to Lily about their weekend plans. A trip to the park, maybe some shopping for new books. Normal things that every parent should be able to do with their child. "You know what, baby girl?" Maria was saying. "Mama learned something important. Sometimes when everything seems impossible, that's exactly when something good is about to happen. You just have to keep believing and keep trying." Outside the diner, James pulled out his phone and called Rachel. "Rachel, it's James. I want you to set up a meeting with Maria next week. I think it's time to expand the Family Support Initiative. I want to make it a permanent part of our company. With a real budget and a full team. She'll be thrilled. She's been talking about all the families they could help with more resources. Good. And Rachel, make sure she knows this expansion is happening because of the incredible work she's already done. She's earned this. As James walked to his truck, he thought about his mother who had passed away 5 years earlier. She would have loved Maria's story. She would have been proud to know that her son had learned the lesson she taught him, that helping others wasn't just about giving money, but about giving people the chance to help themselves. Behind him, through the diner window, he could see Maria laughing as Lily tried to grab her coffee cup. It was a simple moment of joy between a mother and daughter, but to James, it represented everything that was possible when people cared enough to help each other. Sometimes changing someone's life was as simple as buying them dinner when they needed it most.